Alright, what's up, everybody? My hotkeys just decided to stop working, so you got to see me click start recording. But I am here finally to do a little PR breakdown for Gyarados Division, Season 5 of the Great Lakes Draft League. Unfortunately, Dan and I spent about an hour and a half recording a very thorough breakdown of all these teams and really going through our decision making on ranking them. However, my OBS crashed up upon stopping recording, and I lost all of the footage. So I am just gonna do a really quick um, rundown of all these teams and give you kind of the overview of Dan and I's thoughts because we generally agreed on most of the placements here. And my sanity is not strong enough to record that whole thing again. So we're just gonna go in order of we're gonna go in draft order, and then I'll reveal the rankings at the end. So first off, we have Thunderball's team. This team is very, very, very good. Dan and I both really liked this team. Very consistent pieces all throughout. Consistent tailwind, consistent redirection, consistent trick room, consistent fake out, consistent damage with Urshifu. The consistency here is my favorite part about the team. Um, and it's just like it's got a pseudo firewater grass core. Whimsicott is not the best defensive piece of a type core, but it is there to hit things that Volk and Urshifu might not be able to. Urshifu, like you couldn't ask for better rock answers for Volk than Tinkaton and Urshifu. So very good pairing there. Tauros is just pretty good value, being low tier intimidate, as well as having really good sheer force damage output with like stab, body slam, and you get rock slides and all that stuff. The trick room mode here is pretty decent. Dust Noir Tinkaton is going to get it up almost every time, and Dragalge is a very good kind of mid-budget area trick room sweeper. Um, yeah, Dan and I really did not have too many problems with this team. Hisuian Braviary is fantastic. Kind of works under Tailwind or Trick Room, depending on where you want to run it. Same with Dragalge. So a lot of the stuff is very flexible here. Um, and then the Rhydon actually patches things up quite nicely. I think it's very good for its tier, and it has a lot of the Lightning Rod support is really great for Urshifu and Braviary. And it's another Trick Room attacker. So a theme of this division was most of the teams are Trick Room weak, so having a Trick Room mode will benefit you greatly in these rankings. Um, so next up we have Ed's team. This is also a pretty solid team. Um, the core of Goldengo Murkrow is very, very strong. We have seen that do lots of work before in both VGC and draft. There's a few picks I don't like here. I think the Flamigo is completely superfluous and could be dropped for almost anything else. The main problem with this team to me is that there is no Trick Room presence here. Your slowest Mon is 65, and it's a Chimecho, which means your slowest usable Pokemon is 75 at Florges. So the fast mode is great, but if you're not able to stop Trick Room going up against as if you're Ed, it's gonna be real rough. Like, and there's not a ton of teams with strong Trick Room modes, but honestly, with your fastest usable Pokemon or your slowest usable Pokemon being base 75, it doesn't even take much of a insane Trick Room core to just really make it so this team is not having a good day. Um, Personally, I think that dropping Flamigo for some type of Trick Room Mon is worthwhile. But the strong things on this team are very strong. Ogerpon Goldengo is a very good combination. Jolteon provides some nice secondary speed control. I think Espeon could also be replaced. Chimecho is like whatever. It's tier 6. You're not getting too much better in that tier anyway. Um, And yeah, the Cinderace and Florges, like, there's a lot of good value on this team. There's just some picks that I think are a little superfluous. Um, so moving right along, we have Joshy's team. Now to me, this was a team that is on the precipice of being insanely broken, but fell just a little bit short. And in both me and Dan's assessments, we felt like the defensive synergy on this team was definitely lacking. There is a very prominent ground weakness on this team. Three of its biggest pieces in Iron Hands, Magmortar, and Registeel are weak to ground, and your switch-ins are not super consistent. You do have an immunity in Kilowattrel and a resistant Shift Tree, but neither of those are very consistent defensive switches for almost anything, just because of how frail they both are. So that's definitely not ideal. There are some typing overlaps. I don't find them to be the biggest deal. Um, I mean, really, it's just a double electric, but they don't share any weaknesses, so that's fine. But the strengths of this team are I like the last one. The strong is very strong. Iron Hand Screamtail is mad broken with Magmortar 2. Fantastic combination. And then you have your little Disquake mode. You have Shift Tree and Walking Wake and sort of Vulpix for this pseudo Sun mode. I actually really like the Registeel pick here, despite sharing that ground weakness with Iron Hands and Magmortar. I do think it adds another layer to the team of like, sure, you have counterplay to beat Hands, Screamtail, Walking Wake, but no, I don't think that those mons and Registeel share much counterplay. So I think it's gonna make you have to devote a lot more resources than just dealing with the rest of the team if you also want to deal with Registeel. So I think that's very good. And the specific things that counter Registeel, like Toxic, Will-O-Wisp, like those kind of things, Haze, aren't really that good into the rest of the team. So I think that's a very solid pick on this team. And overall, this is a really solid team. I again, like, the defensive synergy is the only thing that is really making me hesitate a little bit. Um, so next up we have Gambit's team. So Gambit went all in on the Chi-Yu stuff. Chi-Yu Goltrace, Chi-Yu Superior. Chi-Yu in general is supporting a lot of stuff on this team. Um, I think my main concern is there's a lot of defensive overlap here. You have two fire types, two dark types. There's some, I think those type overlaps are unnecessary. I don't really see Chi-Yu Goltrace being that strong, because Goltrace I think is still gonna want the nasty plot up, and so I'm just really not convinced that pairing is going to be that strong. You're also making one of your biggest strengths, your Spadef stat, weaker. So like Thunderbolts are going to kill you now when you're almost always living them before. I don't, like this. I mean, generally, I think the team just wants to get Goltrace going. You have Iron Treads that can do like bulldoze next to it to let it move first, which is great. I like that combination a lot, and Iron Treads also greatly helps with the rock weakness on this team. Um, Latias is very good in draft. I'm not super sold on it on this team, though it is definitely a good partner with Iron Treads. Um, I don't know. I just think there's some picks here that should be other things. Like I think Salazzle could be like Persian or something like that. I don't know what was available at this point, but I do like Vaporeon in general. Superior, I'm not super sold on yet, but it definitely could be very good. And yeah, personally, I'm not super sold on this team, and neither was Dan. But it definitely, as all of these teams do, because this is a relatively high power level tier list, um, it does have very strong pieces. So moving on, we have Radial's team, and so this team is very interesting because you see the T-Tar Excadrill, and I'm like, okay, I'm convinced with Milotic, fantastic core there. Um, with and Prankster Tailwind, Volbeat, great. Intimidate, cool. And after that, I'm like, what is going on? Sceptile, it's fine. I can't hate on it too much, but it's really not a good mon. Um, Gliscor is completely superfluous here, in my opinion. You have a better Tailwind setter in Pheasantipity. You have a better ground type. Replace it for something else. In my opinion, I think that would be better. Hunter's like okay. It's a really great defensive switch in for T-Tar. So that's cool because it resists Fairy and is immune to fighting and ground. So that's a cool combo. That's a cool defensive switch in for one of your like kind of main attackers. So I like the Haunter here. Lantern is whatever. It's a tier 6, you know. Torcat is also like good value for its tier, but again, it's one of the better pieces on this team. But Arcaladon is where it really loses me. Um, Arcaladon Volbeat is like cool, but why is Arcaladon on the same team as T-Tar Excadrill? Like the weakness overlap is, oh my goodness, it's so rough. That being said, I think I could see the hidden MVP of this team being Milotic. Um, I think leading this team is going to have to rely on Milotic to protect its like the main damage dealers being Excadrill and T-Tar and Arcaladon, and having that Intimidate deterrent as well is going to be super necessary, I think. But I'm sorry about the yawn. But generally, despite some kind of weird overlaps, I do think the team it's solid. So moving on, we have Funky's team, and Funky's team is very, very good. Um, he took, to me, this is a very draft good Pokemon type of team. Everything here is bringable, with maybe the exception of Grumpig. Grumpig is a fine mon. I don't know if you bring it when you do have Galarian Articuno on the same team, but it's not terrible. So everything here does something, which is great. And then you factor in that your fantasy core is Roaring Moon, Empoleon, Flutter, and that's very strong. No team is going faster than this, and it's like not close. Um, you have good priority. You have Coughing Slacking, which like doesn't feel that threatening, and then if you accidentally don't prep for it and you get swept, never a good feeling. And then Mamoswine is just great coverage, like on top of all the offensive ones you already have. The damage output here is fantastic. The physical special split is good. Little Trick Room weak. Your slowest mon being, Coughing sort of, but really it's base 60 Empoleon. Not super great. There are a few teams that are just going to bring Trick Room into him, and it's going to be very tough. But I do think the team has the bulk to deal with that. You also have really good mons at killing Trick Room setters. So overall, I think this team is very, very good. So then we have Bene's team. Bene's team is very odd. To me, it almost looks like a Dan team, if you're not familiar. Dan tends to draft bulky, mid-speed teams where there's no like super insane speed tiers or anything, and some weird type overlaps sometimes. But then you look at it and it's like, wow, every Pokemon is so good on this team. And that's pretty much the case here. Riolu and Swalot are not like broken, but Prankster coaching next to like Ogerpon and Komo-o and Metagross, it's great. And then Swalot is Swalot, not really a Pokemon, but it's okay. We love him anyway, or at least Bene does, because he drafts him like every season. Strengths of this team, I think, are, generally just the bulk is fantastic. You have a good kind of divide between physical and special, both in terms of offense and bulk. Sylveon and Metagross complement each other stat-wise almost perfectly. I do wish there was a faster Tailwind setter here. Suicune is consistent Tailwind, but it's not fast Tailwind. And I think when it's not fast Tailwind, you're effectively benefiting from Tailwind one turn less. So I do wish there was a better Tailwind setter here, because I think Metagross and Sylveon kind of desperately need that support. And I think Ogerpon likes it too. The speed tiers here are again not great. Dunsparce is a very good Pokemon in my opinion, but the fact that it's your slowest thing and kind of almost hoping to carry your Trick Room matchup is a little tough. But yeah, I mean, this team is very, very good. The defensive synergy is crazy, and I like it. So next up is Kyle's team. This is a very Wakeman style team. Very fast, relatively frail. It does have one of the best Trick Room cores in the division, though. Galarian Slowbro and Dondozo and Vikavolt is a very effective Trick Room core, in my opinion. And then you have tons of priority spam with Chenpao Entei and then adding Masquerada on there. Plus, you throw on that Enamorus and Dragapult, and your fast and speed 2s are crazy, and the Trick Room mode is good. This is definitely one of the best teams at operating at any speed. That being said, it is very frail, generally speaking. The bulk is mostly centered around Dondozo, which without Tatsugiri is not the bulkiest thing on the planet. Poltergeist and Shroodle are not really real Pokemon. They're not the worst NFE, like Babymon tier 6s, but they're not good. Tinkaton is fine. I've used Tinkaton before, and it does stuff. But overall, I think the main issue with this team, I think this team is broken. I just think the one issue, having run teams like this myself in the past, is it's very frail, and I think that can be a problem. But we will move on to H2O Warriors team. So he has rain, and lots of it. 3 Swift Swimmers. In my opinion, 3 is not necessary. Personally, out of the 3 you have, I would drop Beartic for something else. For something to help with your Trick Room matchup, because Bastiodon is fine, but not enough to carry a bad Trick Room matchup, in my opinion. This team does a couple of things, but it does them very, very well. The one thing is mainly, I'm going to go fast and click water moves in rain, which is a very viable strategy. Politoed Kingdra is very good. Overquill is kind of a nice secondary Swift Swimmer, plus you get Intimidate, and it doesn't share any typings. So I don't mind that as a second Swift Swimmer. I think the third is a little excessive, though. I don't think Beartic is as good as the other 2, and I think it could be dropped. Revavroom has like Omni coverage now, like Temper Flare and high horsepower, insanely good coverage now. I drafted it in the wrong meta, I guess, because when I had it in PDPL, it had like steel moves and poison moves, and that's it. But I think this team is solid. I think the defensive synergy is not fantastic. I do like Mimikyu, but it is kind of, being one of your kind of anti-Trick Room mons, it is kind of susceptible to just dying to a double up, because it's kind of fast for Trick Room, being base 96. So that's something to keep in mind. But I do like this team. It's just the redundancies and the kind of weakness to Trick Room is pretty rough. Though the Bastiodon trade, I do think, improves it. Alright, so now we're on to Wolf's team. This team is very strange to me. I like it. Like, I think it's good. However, I think there's strong pieces and then things that make no sense. To me, the strength is Sableye, Heatran, Tingly, Latios. That combo of 4 is crazy broken. I think the defensive synergy and offensive synergy between the 3 kind of Heatran, Tinglu, and Latios is fantastic. And then you pair that with the support that Sableye provides, very convincing to me. But then from there, I start to lose it a little bit. Virizion with no beat up that I can see is real rough. I don't really see the vision for Virizion there. Gardevoir is like fine. But this is another team where like there's just kind of some redundant like type overlaps that don't need to be there. Blastoise and Basculin, I don't get why they're on the same team. I think one of those could be swapped for something else. I don't know which. I don't mind having the second Ghost because Sableye and Basculin don't share any weaknesses, but I do think that you should drop one of those water types. I don't think both need to be here. Um, but that being said, I do think the team is relatively good. The speed tiers are not great. Latios being your only thing over base 100 is really tough. But the bulk and the speed control from Sableye are good, though I do think it's almost over reliant on Sableye here. So we'll see what happens if people are able to shut that thing down before it can start, clicking Quash and Thunderwave and all that stuff. But overall, solid team. So now we're on to Flamingo's team, and unfortunately, this team sucks. He drafted mustaches, so every Pokemon on his team has a mustache, and it's hilarious, but it's bad. Ground types into this team are crazy. Just in general, like lots of repeat typings. The speed tiers aren't that great, although they're not the worst in the division somehow. You do have some stuff going for you, like, Disquake with Lando and Thundy, a good Scarfer with Hisui and Samurott, really consistent fake out from Mienshao, a good Trick Room mode of Golem, Rabska, and then, kind of Weezing and Kingambit can kind of fit on there too. Good ways to enable Electivire, but that's kind of where it ends for me. I don't really have that much to say on this one because it's obviously a meme, but we're going to move on to Yasha's team. Yasha's team is very good. I think it's kind of comparable to Bene's team. I think that it's kind of a bunch of just good Pokemon slapped together in a way that makes a lot of sense. I think that the Prankster Tailwind and Fake Tears is absolutely phenomenal here. Having that support of both Tailwind and Fake Tears for Prim and Chandelure is so awesome. And then the combo of like Ogerpon Mence is great, super consistent at getting your Dragon Dances off with Salamence. And Ogerpon covers a few of Mence's weaknesses, namely being, I guess it's just the ice types, but still covering its 4 times weakness is nice. There's just a lot of good like offensive coverage here, good spread damage, which a lot of these teams actually don't have great spread damage. Flamingos actually might have one of the better amounts of spread damage, but yeah, I think this team is solid. Good Trick Room with Galarian Slowking, Bellybolt, Piloswine, supported by redirection from Ogerpon and Fake Out from Ambipom. I think Ambipom is very solid and consistent as well. So I think that's really cool to kind of support it. So last 2 teams here. This one is Master Phoenix's team. So this team is strange. I do like it. I'm not a Regigigas believer, but I'm down to be proven wrong on that. And I think that it's like it's got good speed control. Like Rillaboom Fake Out plus, Slowking, Trick Room, and Torn Tailwind is pretty good. The damage output here I think is a little low, at least initially. Rillaboom packs some good initial punch right out of the gate with no support, but Gouging Fire kind of needs some type of setup or support. Um, and I don't see like a Sunsetter here, which I think Gouging Fire desperately wants to have. Um, yeah, I just yeah, I think the Gigas is weird. I think the team is very overwhelmingly physical. Your three highest offensive stats are Gouging Fire, Gigas, and Grand Bull, and Rillaboom, actually four. And so they're all physical attackers. Your special attackers, your strongest one is Torn at base 110, which is not super great. But I do think this team is solid. There's good bulk, good. The speed tiers are pretty good. And yeah, moving on to the last team, Dan's team. So this is a very standard Dan team. The speed tiers are actually kind of terrible, but it's very bulky. You have very consistent Trick Room from Farigiraf, consistent Trick Room sweepers in Enamorus and Araquanid, which cover each other pretty well in terms of offensive coverage. And then Raging Bolt for priority, and Scizor, the priority on this team is fantastic. Impidimp just because. Iron Jugulis Tailwind, and you can function Raging Bolt, Farigiraf, Araquanid, Scizor, Emboar, and Amorous. Pretty much all of this team can run under Tailwind, which is really cool. I just, I'm a little skeptical about the speed tiers and the yeah, I mean, it's mostly just the speed tiers, but I think that it's very solid. Like, the value here is fantastic. So that being said, here are the rankings. We have Thunderball in first, followed by Funky, Dan, Cosmic Kyle, and Yasha to make up the top 5. Bene and Joshi to round out the top half. Master Phoenix, Wolf, Ed, Radio Gambit, H2O, and Flamingo in the bottom half. Little disclaimer that none of these teams are bad. They're all relatively good, with maybe the exception of Flamingos. But even Flamingos does have some very good things going for it. So that being said, thank you all for watching. I appreciate your patience in this, and I will see you guys next time. Thanks for watching.